Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report, obviously we have a really cool variant of the AK on the workbench to shoot and review. And the firearm we will be shooting and reviewing is the Century Arms AES-10B2, otherwise known as a Romanian RPK. Now, I am not going to try to pronounce what RPK stands for in Russian, but the English translation is Kalashnikov's handheld machine gun. Now, this is a semi-automatic only rifle, but it is based off of the light machine gun of the Soviet Union. It was designed by Mikhail Kalashnikov. It is chambered in 7.62 by 39. It does have some parts interchangeability with a standard AK. And the original design came from the standardization of all Soviet weapons during the Cold War. And obviously the AK was the infantry rifle of the military, so they wanted their light machine gun to be based off of the same firearm for, once again, ammo reasons, parts compatibility reasons, and a simplicity of manual of arms, so soldiers could go back and forth between the two with little difference in training. So I'm really excited to get a chance to shoot this because even though this is only semi-automatic, this is still a really darn cool firearm. It might not be very practical, but if you love the AK and the AK platform and the history of the AK, I think you really got to have something like this in your collection. Now, before we get this gun to the range and find out how it shoots and is it any more accurate with this bipod and this extra long barrel, I always want to thank the people that make these videos possible. And the first person I want to thank is the owner of this really cool firearm. He's a local fan and subscriber, and he has lent many other AKs to the channel for me to review. His name is Matt. So Matt, thank you once again, and thank you for also providing some ammunition for this range report. I always want to thank my Patreon supporters because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not do this without them. And if you guys want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there's a link in the description below, and you guys can see all of these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor for every one of these range reports because he provides a lot of ammunition as well, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And I know we are here once again reviewing a fine firearm made of steel and wood. And if you like guns like this, most likely you have a Colt 1911, a Browning High Power, a CZ75, or a Beretta 92, just to name a few. And you might be in the market for a set of custom and exquisite wood grips to make your gun unique and one of a kind. Well, I have the perfect grip company for you. Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark is an artist and he's a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He can create his own laminate woods and even apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin to make these grips unique and one of a kind. So I'm going to ask you to go over to his website. I'm going to put it in a comment in this video as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. Please go over there and check out everything he has to offer. And when you place your order for your set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so once again, let's talk about the really cool AK variant we have on the table today. The Century Arms AES-10B2. It's a Romanian RPK, imported and then modified a little bit by Century Arms. It has a 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver. Now, the original AKs are 1 millimeter thick, and because these were designed as light machine guns, they wanted the receivers to be a little bit more durable. It has a 23.25 inch chrome-lined heavy barrel with a bipod attached that is fixed to the barrel. It weighs 9 pounds, and it does come with the famous clubfoot RPK style stock. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the review when I get to take it to the range. Now, as always, before taking it to the range, I want to talk about the things that I like and don't like. And I always want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun is its history. You guys know I'm a collector, probably more than I am a shooter. I love to learn everything there is to know about guns. I'm fascinated with the mechanics, and I'm very fascinated with how they fit into the course of human history. And this is a famous Soviet-Russian weapon. And everybody loves the AK. You might not have it as your top favorite firearm, but you have to appreciate its design, its simplicity, and the fact that this gun holds a very special place in the Soviet Union's military history. You really have to appreciate that. And who doesn't like the look of a big old light machine gun? So as I said, even though this is not a machine gun, it is semi-automatic only, you really just have to appreciate it. And if you're a huge AK fan, you probably want one in your collection. Now, the next thing I love about this gun is its build quality. Now, this is imported by Century Arms. I know they've done some work to it. And in the past, Century has gotten a bad rep with certain models when it comes to their quality. However, just handling this here on the workbench, I'm pretty darn impressed with it. It's finished nice. It has some nice furniture on it. I don't see any defects in it. It just seems to be put together very, very nice. And I do appreciate that. Sometimes Century Arms can really put out a really nice product. Another thing about this gun that I like, especially over the AKs, is the rear sight is adjustable for windage. Yeah, you normally don't see that. And we have the elevation like always, but that is a different rear sight, and I do like the fact that you can do that from the rear of the gun instead of having to use a special tool on the front sight. Now, you can adjust the front sight like a standard AK, but you can do a lot of work in the back, and I totally understand why they wanted to change that design. And the last thing I like about this gun is it has so much parts compatibility with the standard AK, including magazines. Now, the magazine that a lot of people associate with this gun is a 75 round drum magazine. Now, when Matt lent this to the channel, he did let me borrow one. However, due to the rules of YouTube, I don't want to run afoul. So I will be using standard 30 round magazines in this review. And something to note that Century Arms had to do when they imported this is because of US importation laws, these were originally imported with single stack magazines. So Century Arms had to open these up to allow them to take a standard AK magazine, which is double stack. So that's what I like about this gun. Now let's talk about a couple things about it that I don't like. And speaking of that magwell, the first thing I don't like about this gun is that when they did open it up, it's a little bit on the tight side. In fact, Matt, who lent this to the channel, said you might struggle with it a little bit. Now, I have two magazines for this review. I have some Romanian Milsurp magazines and a Magpul one. And I did discover this before I went to the range. These are pretty tight to get in there, and you have to have them go in at just the right angle. The Milsurp ones seem to work okay, but when it comes to the Magpul ones, it doesn't lock in for some reason. So I don't know if it's that little tab on the back or there's something about these. It just doesn't fit in this gun. So for this review, I'm going to have to be using the Milsurp mags. The last thing about this gun that I don't like is the bipod. Now, the bipod really is cool. It's not the greatest bipod in the world, but I find that it's a little bit tricky to use. The adjustments on it are really kind of hard to fine tune. You can close it up pretty easy. It's a very industrial kind of bipod, but for me, I guess I'm just more used to the more modern offerings, but I do appreciate it because of its history. It also adds a lot of weight to the end. In some ways, I kind of wish it was removable, but I understand why it's not, because the Soviet Union didn't want their troops taking off parts in the field and then possibly losing them, and then a gun like this, which would be a light machine gun, would pretty much be unusable. But as a semi-automatic firearm, I think it'd be kind of cool if you could take this off, because it does get a little bit heavy, and if you can't shoot it from the prone position, I can tell you the bipod will want to fall down. It doesn't really stay on the gun very much when it's folded. It's really designed to be put in a position like this where the gun is on the ground on a bench or some type of barrier. So that's what I don't like about this gun. So the next thing I want to do before getting into the range is show you what this trigger is all about. Now, I'm not 100% sure which trigger Century Arms has put in here. I know they have an in-house trigger, and some people say they're good, some people say they're bad. And the trigger is something that they have to change when they import them for 922R compliance. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera. Let me get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, and let's see what this trigger is all about. So let's take a closer look at the trigger in this Century Arms Romanian RPK. Now right now I do have the magazine out. If you're ever going to test your trigger, of course, make sure that you remove the magazine and visually inspect the chamber and make sure the gun is unloaded. Now, before we measure the trigger, let's take a look at how it functions. Let's take a look at the take-up first. It is a little bit long of a take-up. It's a little bit spongy, but we do come back to a wall if you really feather it. And it doesn't break very crisp, but it's not bad for a standard AK trigger. And then let's take a look at the reset. Reset is a little bit long, but it is tactile and audible. And then we have that spongy take-up again coming back to that wall. Not the greatest trigger in the world, but I definitely think it is functional in an unpractical gun like this. But of course, you're not buying this gun for precision shooting. You're buying it because it's just simply really, really cool and historical. So let's go ahead and get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge. Let's clear the averages and let's see what this trigger measures at from Century Arms. For our first pull, 4 pounds, 4.1 ounces. Three pounds, 14.5 ounces. Four pounds, 6.3 ounces. 3 pounds, 12.3 ounces. And finally, we have 4 pounds, 4.8 ounces, which gives us an average of 4 pounds, 2.0 ounces. Overall, not a bad trigger for a gun like this. Now, hopefully this trigger is going to translate into a pretty accurate firearm. Now, the original intention of this gun was a light machine gun. So this is not a sniper rifle or any type of gun that is designed for precision shooting. But I want to mention that because of the format of this review. Because it's only a semi-automatic firearm, I can't really review it as a machine gun. But because we do have this really cool long and heavy barrel with this bipod, I want to see what type of accuracy I can get out of it. After all, if you purchase this gun and you take it to the range, this is probably the type of shooting that you're going to do with it. So we're going to start off at 25 yards, then go out to 50 and then 100 yards and see if using these iron sights and with this kind of spongy trigger, if this is even a practical gun at the range. So let's go to the range. Let's start off at 25 yards just using these iron sights and see how the gun performs, see how accurate it is, and see if there's anything about the way this gun shoots that I like or don't like, and I'll report back to you. So let's go to the range. And that was a really interesting experience because something happened that I wasn't expecting. This gun has more recoil than a standard AK. I was really thinking it would be a pretty light shooting firearm. After all, we have a much heavier and longer barrel. The whole gun is heavy and we have a bipod, but it has a lot of recoil. Not bad, just a little bit more than your standard AK. Now that could be because we still have a large mass with the long stroke piston system that is reciprocating when you fire it. I'm not really 100% sure why, but it has more recoil than I was expecting. It's not soft shooting. So now let's talk about its accuracy. Of course, I was using iron sights and these were my first shots. And at 25 yards, while that group was not super tight, it was okay. Of course, we're talking about a light machine gun here and not a sniper rifle. But now I know how this gun performs. So now I'm going to double the distance of this target. I'm going to shoot it at 50 yards, put another magazine through it, just take my time and see if I can do any better with the accuracy at this distance. So let's go back to the range and see how I do. And that group was definitely a little bit better, and that's because the rear sight is adjustable. That is a huge upgrade over the other AK rifles I have shot in the past. And I am experiencing some issues when it comes to how tight this magwell is. You'll probably see me kind of fumbling loading this gun almost in every bit of range footage you see. This magwell honestly is just a little bit tight and it's a little bit finicky. Now that could be because of Century Arms and not necessarily the Romanian factory that built the gun, but it is just something to note. All right, so the next test I want to do is set up the target at 100 yards. Being a light machine gun, this gun was originally designed for suppressive fire. So I'm going to use a human-sized silhouette, and if I can put these rounds on target anywhere at 100 yards, I'm going to be pretty happy because I'm only using iron sights with this thing. So let's go back to the range and see if I can keep these rounds on target. And hey, I was able to get all of the rounds on target and the grouping wasn't too bad. I was actually kind of expecting more of a shotgun pattern, but for this gun to group that well, I'm pretty happy. I think I'm getting used to these iron sights and am able to dial them in pretty good. Now there's something else you should note about that shooting footage. Somewhere in the middle I had to pick up the rifle, move it back to the right. And that's because under recoil this gun is jumping around a little bit and it wants to move to the left. It might be because of this slant brake. The slant brakes on AKs usually work really well. All right, so the next test I want to do is get out the Garmin Zero chronograph. I'm just kind of curious what this longer barrel is going to do to the projectile velocity of 7.62 by 39 as compared to a standard AK. So let's go back to the range and let's get some ballistics data on this Romanian RPK.
$24.77. $23.77. $24.20. $24.40. $23.95. $24.17. $24.67. $23.81. $24.06. And $23.80.
And based off of the data that we collected, I'm honestly kind of surprised. These projectiles don't have much more velocity than a standard AK with a 16-inch barrel. That makes me think that this longer and heavier barrel is not for a ballistic advantage with 7.62 by 39, but is designed more for durability because these barrels are not interchangeable in the field like other light machine guns that are fielded by other militaries. I also want to talk about this clubfoot stock in the back, and I'm trying to shoot this in what I think is the traditional way. This stock is designed so you take your non-shooting hand and put it back here to add extra stability. I've seen many pictures of soldiers in the field doing that with these guns. It's kind of an interesting feature and design of this stock. All right, so the next test I want to do is fold this bipod and I want to shoot this from the shoulder like a traditional rifle. Now granted, you're probably not going to shoot it this way that often, but maybe in the field, if you're a soldier, you had to shoot it this way. And I'm just curious, is this gun even practical if it's set up like that? So let's go back to the range, see how fast I can shoot it from the shoulder, and see if it's even comfortable because it is kind of oddly balanced. So let's go back to the range and find out. And I can tell you this gun is heavy, it's kind of awkward to shoot, and it's not very well balanced. I actually had to film this 2 times. The first time I filmed it when I was just holding the handguard like a typical AK. But then in the middle of my shooting, the bipod deployed, it doesn't really retain onto the gun that well. It always wants to fall off under recoil. So I shot that footage again, but this time I had my hand on the bipod to prevent it from deploying. And even then, it was really awkward. It's just not a gun that is designed to be shot that way. But I wanted to test that out because maybe if you own this, you would want to shoot it that way, or possibly there were instances in the field and in battle where people that had RPKs used it like that. All right, so the next test I want to do is really shoot it the way I think this gun was intended. I want to simulate what it would be like as a machine gun. Essentially, I'm just going to pull this trigger as fast as I possibly can with the bipod deployed and from the bench. So let's go back to the range and just see how fast I can shoot this. And while that was definitely a lot of fun to shoot, it was definitely not the most accurate firearm I've ever shot this way. This gun has a lot of recoil, the gun jumps around a lot, but also remember, a light machine gun is designed for suppressive fire and not necessarily accurate fire. And even though this gun is only semi-automatic, I think it still kind of fills that role if you're trying to simulate that experience. But it still is a lot of fun, and I can only imagine how awesome it would be if I could show you the 75 round drum with a mag dump. So what are my final thoughts on the Century Arms Romanian RPK? Well, this is definitely not a practical gun. This is not a gun I would recommend for a home defense weapon, but maybe as a range toy, or if you are an AK collector, you just have to have something like this in your safe to go along with all of your other AKs. It does seem to be very well built. The magwell is a little bit tight, and it has what I'm going to refer to as AK accuracy. Now, I know some people are going to say the AK can be just as accurate as any other rifle. I totally get it, but you know this gun's reputation. And I'm not saying that necessarily is bad. It's just indicative of the design. So on my star system, how would I rate the Century Arms Romanian RPK? Well, this thing is going to get 4.5 stars out of 5. It ran good, and when I was shooting it semi-auto and taking my time, it was pretty darn accurate. But the reason I'm giving it such a high score is because the gun is so darn cool. There is nothing else out there like this, and when you take it to the range, you're definitely going to get some looks and have people come up and want to meet you and ask questions about your gun. And that is what makes this gun so awesome. So what do you think about the Century Arms Romanian RPK? I would like to know, does a gun like this interest you? Would you ever own one, even though it's not practical? Let me know in the comment section below. And, as always, thanks for watching.